Okay. Hi, Satheesh sir. So nice to talk to you today.
Hello,
Um,
Ritwika. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you.
Okay. So let's cut to the chase, and let's get to know you better as a person for this whole interview. So, if you could just tell me a bit about your initial days in the UK when you had just arrived, how was it for you over there?
Now, luckily for me, my elder brother was in UK, so I probably did not go through the usual struggles that actually many arrivals in UK go through. uh, but now, if you ask me what is the thing which sticks to my mind when I arrived in UK, that was the number of applications that I had to send to get my first SHO job. I had to send probably hundreds of applications before I actually got even interviewed. Ritwika, can you just stop it actually? Uh, because my other phone. Now, as I was saying to you, Ritwika, the main three theme that will run through the whole thing is how I actually felt that there was differential treatment for people from abroad. And actually that I noticed actually from the very first day that I was in training. So to tell you an example, this used to happen every day of my life. There are actually, if I was doing ward rounds with my consultant, it will be a totally business ward round. But if there was one white girl or one white doctor along with us at the ward rounds, then the consultant will start teaching. So from the very first few days, I noticed this difference. I was clever in the sense that actually I knew that actually I am in a different country, and for me to progress, I cannot challenge the system. So I kept my head down and continued with my training. So all throughout, for that matter, actually all throughout the career of any international medical graduate who comes into this country, this is a way of life for them. I will stop there in terms of my initial days.
Okay. No, thank you so much for sharing that, short story. And I can understand what you went through, when you had just arrived over there and you were new over there. So, like looking back at your time, if there was one piece of advice that you would like to give to, like young medical researchers or medical students who are actually going out to pursue their education, what would it be?
Now, the thing that I would want to say to youngsters is actually dream well, and follow your dreams, and you will get there if that is the case. The other piece of advice that I want to give youngsters is actually, uh, I'm not saying that what is being done here is right, but you are in a different country, and it may be that actually sometimes you have to swallow your pride to be able to achieve what you want to do. And also do not challenge the system until you feel that you are in a position to do so. Otherwise, they will hurt you. So those are the two pieces of small advice that I want to give the youngsters. Follow your dream and be careful in challenging the system, because it's not going to be a good outcome for you. But actually, when you are in a position where you think you can do so, then yes, of course you should do it. If you don't do it, who else is going to do it for you? And actually, you have to think about actually people who are coming after us. I have to think about my children and their children. They have to be treated well too. So if I don't do it, who else is going to do it for you? Okay.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. Like that actually inspired me also because I know like what you're saying and like where you're coming from as well. So if you hadn't been a doctor, then what would you have been? Like what was the alternate career or profession? Or like when you were a child, did you always think that this is what you wanted to become? If you could shed some light on the childhood Satheesh a bit.
Now, that is an interesting question. Now, most people would have said to you, oh, this is what I wanted to be always. I wanted to be a doctor always. But that is not the case with me. I always wanted to be an engineer. And then, then you would ask me, why did you choose a career of being in the medical profession? Perhaps you will not know this, Ritwika. I joined my medical school in the year 1971. So during that time, everyone who was bright went to medical schools. So if you actually scored good marks in your, and then it was called pre-degree. Now it's called +2. So if you scored very high marks in science subjects, then the only choice that you had is to go to the medical field. But that's where everyone went. And so I probably did not have any choice other than to go to medical school. But if you ask me now, if you were in the same position now, would you go back to medicine? Now, this will be an interesting answer because many people would not want to say this, but I say absolutely not. I would actually go for engineering because actually I had a very good marks and I could have chosen any career at that time.
Right. I get where you're coming from because at one point of time when like we are small, we are told that okay, engineering or medicine is like the two options that we have. So we need to choose either or. But like while you're there, when you're there in UK, like you've been there for so long for all these years. What are the different things that you actually miss about India, that you're reminiscent about India? Anything that you miss about like India as such?
Now, there are actually two important things that comes to my mind. I miss my native language, Ritwika. My native language is Malayalam. Now, because you are brought up in your younger days speaking Malayalam, it is very difficult to convey your feelings through another language. So being able to speak your own language with your friends is something that I miss greatly. The other thing is, your most intimate friends are your childhood friends. And I don't have any childhood friends in the UK. So that I miss it greatly. That's why actually I try to go to India at least once a year from the time I have been living in UK. Unfortunately, for the 2 years, we have not been able to travel because of COVID. So those are the two things that actually I miss.
Right. So speaking of friends, like like you rightly mentioned, like childhood friends are so important. So if your closest friends, like your childhood friends, like if they had to describe Satheesh Matthew, then how would they do so?
That is a very, very good question, which I had not thought of at all. Now, how would they describe me? They will say that actually I am a very dependable person. They will say that they can approach me if at all they're in any difficulty. They will say that I am an honest person. And they will say that actually, I hope they will say that he's quite a bright individual who knows what he is doing. And I also think actually that they will say that I am a self-made man. my father died when I was 17 years old, which means actually when I was in my second year of medical school. So I would not say life was a struggle, but I had to look after myself many times.
Right. I understand that, and I'm sure, like, you've made your mark over there whilst you're there in the UK. So, like, like you said that, like it's a little different how people are treated over there, once you come from a foreign country. So what has been your, like, how have you been the crusader for justice over there? Like, what are the different actionable steps you have taken to ensure that this does not repeat again? Or, and have you been a part of any committees? Have you been a part of any policy making bodies? What are the different things that, you have voiced for this?
Yes. Now, how long do I have for this now, Ritwika? Because if I want to tell the story, it will take a long time. So you cut me short when you think actually we have gone past the time limit. Now, I was saying to you that I was careful in not challenging the system until I became a consultant. I knew that actually without doing so, without being in a position of power, I will not be able to actually challenge the system and make changes. So eventually I became a consultant, and you are asking me about the leadership positions that I have had, going from the smallest to the highest. I have been in charge of training of junior doctors in my department. I have been a unit training director. I have been a clinical lead for my department. I do not know what a clinical lead is. Clinical lead is actually, he looks after all the doctors, whether they are actually career grade doctors or junior doctors in the department. Then I became a clinical director. Clinical director has got slightly bit higher authority in the sense actually he looks after more than one department. Then I became a medical director of New Hampshire City. Medical director is, looks after the whole hospital in terms of doctors. So that is actually my leadership roles in the NHS. I was also an advisor, specialist advisor to the CQC. CQC is a body which inspects hospitals to make sure that everything is being done properly in the hospital. So I was a specialist advisor to the CQC. And more importantly than all these is that I have worked with BAPIO almost since its inception. BAPIO is the British Association of Physicians of Indian Origin. I have worked up from grassroots level, and I have been the vice president of BAPIO for quite a few years now. Now, going back to the questions that you asked me, my fights for justice. Now, I take you back to the first year that I became a consultant. When this is actually within a few days after my becoming a consultant, one of my colleagues who is also of Indian origin came to me and said, Satheesh, there is significant differential treatment here. And I do not know what a discretionary points means to you. Discretionary points are actually sort of salary rise once you reach the top of your salary scale. And this is discretionary in nature, meaning that everyone is not entitled for discretionary points. So there's a sort of scoring for it, and only people who are meritorious will get discretionary points, which means that their salary will increase significantly if you get a discretionary point. So she said to me, Satheesh, I have noticed this. Majority of the discretionary points go to white consultants. Now, if non-white consultants apply for the discretionary points, they will get 0 points in the first application. Then if they apply second year, they'll get 1 point, and so on and so forth. But if a white consultant applies, they will always get 2 points, and they will get 2 points in the consecutive years, and they will get their 5th point, which is the last point, in the consecutive year. So I wanted to test out whether this is true. So we actually took the figures of the past 5 years, and we very clearly showed that actually there's a big discrepancy in how people were being treated. And because I was a new consultant, I was quite naive. What we did is actually, I think many people may not do. I and my friend took a bus, and then there was a quasi-governmental body called Commission for Racial Equality. I went to the Commission for Racial Equality and made a complaint there. Now, so they came to the trust to make inquiries. You won't believe this. The trust director of human resources made an open comment that his days in the trust in the hospital are numbered. And eventually, somebody actually made a false complaint against me. They suspended me for 8 months. But I was actually ready now. I actually took them to the employment tribunal of the court. Now then they went on their back foot. They said they will pay me 40,000 pounds if I withdraw the case. I said no. The person who did this has to apologize to me. So the case went on. Now, with this, I became even more determined that I should fight this injustice. And all throughout my career, I have done that. And actually, perhaps I had a vengeance to make sure that I will not allow this to happen. So again, actually, let me tell you, actually, during the course of my job, when, let us say, once somebody retires, what they would do is they would promote a white doctor to the interim post. Then what that does is actually, when the real post is advertised, only this white doctor will have experience with that job, which means that others are actually disadvantaged. And I actually complained every time, Ritwika, every time I found this, I complained to the chief executive or the medical director. And they thought that I was a troublemaker, but they knew that I will not leave them. If they actually try to do anything to them, they know from their past experience that I will not leave them. Other issues that I have looked after is actually, if a doctor from India or anywhere abroad comes to this country, there are guidelines on what sort of pay scale they should be put in. So if they have got, let us say, 5 years experience in India, they have to be given credit for those 5 years. And I saw actually that these people actually were being put on a lower salary scale. And I actually made a big fuss about it. And they had no choice other than to put them on the right salary scale. The other thing that they used to do in the hospitals, actually, if a doctor was on a contract less than 6 months duration, they will not be given study leave. So who are the doctors who will be on contract for less than 6 months? All of them are international medical graduates. So I said, actually, this is not allowed. I will actually have to complain. If I'll go outside the trust if you continue doing this. And they actually agreed to my request. And they started actually giving them on also study leave. I have done lots of this, Ritwika. The story will not end. But let me actually, before I leave this, let me tell you the last thing that I did. This is during the COVID. This is in Newham Hospital where I worked. What I found is the nurses who were relocated to intensive care units where they would be actually facing with COVID patients, majority of them were BME nurses. Majority of the nurses who were relocated to the intensive care units where they would actually face, they would come into contact with COVID patients where majority were BME nurses or Black and ethnic minority nurses. I actually wrote to the chief executive and they were not willing to accept it in the initial phases, but I would not leave them. And finally, the chief executive herself had to go and apologize to these nurses for treating them badly. Now, that is all about my hospital. Now, what have we done at national level? Let me tell you a few examples. Or are you actually bored with me now, Ritwika?
No, I just wanted to move on to the next question, actually, like, just to make it a little light. Because
okay. Now we have done a lot of work at national level also, looking after the doctors who have been discriminated against. Now I'll just enumerate a few. We actually took a case of HSMP, highly skilled migrant program visas, which went up to the Supreme Court. This was through BAPIO, and we won. This was against the Department of Health. We took off a case of differential attainment in the Royal College of General Practitioners. We took it for judicial review. Then actually we have dealt with actually a lot of junior doctors who don't get shortlisted properly, indirectly because of their ethnicity. That also we have won. And now the thing that I'm working on is differential treatment of junior doctors who are from abroad in their applications for training job. I will, because actually, if I actually started enumerating the details of this, it'll take a long time. So I'll stop this here.
Thank you so much. No, of course, we can speak more about this, but that was actually very insightful because we got to know that, what is happening on the other side over there. And, like how you are actually fighting for your rights, which you rightly deserve whilst you're there. So just the last question now on a lighter note, what are some of the activities or hobbies that you like doing when you're not working, like when you're not being a doctor? What are the things that you like doing outside work?
Now, Ritwika, I'm retired now. Majority of the time that I actually, one thing that I like is actually, I still like doing actually this, because injustice has to be fought against. So I actually spend a lot of time researching through these issues and bring it to the light, bringing it to the authorities. So that's actually something that I enjoy as a hobby, perhaps. What else do I do? Actually, I said to you that actually I would have been an engineer if I was not a doctor. I do a lot of DIY projects at home. I actually repair my car. I do a lot of actually work with nuts and bolts. I actually also read. Now, the other thing that I'm doing now, interestingly, is I'm actually reading a textbook of law. It's a textbook on employment law. So I think actually for me to be able to help these people, if I actually know about the law, it will help. So that is something that I'm doing. Actually, because I have dealt with most of these things, actually, I'm not finding it difficult to read a textbook of law. So those are my current hobbies.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. That was really interesting and good to know you, sir. It was great interacting with you.
Okay. Now tell me, Ritwika,